How did America conquer the world? If you're thinking of armies, tanks, and aircraft carriers, you're only seeing half the picture. The real weapon, the one that built a silent empire, isn't made of steel, it's made of paper. It's the U.S. dollar. What if I told you that this piece of green paper is the most sophisticated and powerful weapon ever created? A weapon that can bring nations to their knees without a single shot fired. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a story of power, control, and a financial system that the world depends on, but few truly understand. This isn't just about economics. It's about a hidden war that's being fought every single day. To understand how the dollar became so powerful, we have to go back to the end of World War II. The world was in ruins, and the major powers gathered at a place called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in 1944. Their goal was to create a new, stable global economic system to prevent another Great Depression and foster international trade. At that moment, the United States held almost 2/3 of the world's gold. This gave them incredible leverage. The deal they struck was simple but brilliant. Other countries would peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. dollar, in turn, would be convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This was the birth of the Bretton Woods system. Suddenly, the dollar wasn't just America's money, it became the world's money. It was the anchor of global finance, the standard by which all other currencies were measured. For decades, this system worked. It fueled a post-war economic boom, and global trade flourished. Countries needed to hold dollars to trade with each other and to manage their own economies. This created a massive, constant demand for U.S. currency. It was like everyone in the world needed to keep a stash of dollars in their pocket, just in case. But in 1971, everything changed. The Vietnam War and domestic spending programs had put immense strain on the U.S. economy. Countries started getting nervous and began demanding gold for their dollars, draining America's reserves. President Richard Nixon saw the writing on the wall. In a move that shocked the world, he unilaterally severed the dollar's link to gold. This was the Nixon Shock. Logically, this should have been the end of the dollar's reign. It was no longer backed by anything tangible, just the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. But something incredible happened. The world didn't abandon the dollar. Why? Because there was no alternative. The entire global financial infrastructure, from international trade to banking, was built around it. A new system emerged, one even more beneficial to the United States: the petrodollar system. The U.S. struck a deal with Saudi Arabia and other major oil producers. They agreed to price their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. Since every country needs oil, a country now needed dollars to buy it. This masterstroke locked in global demand for the dollar, with gold, but with black gold oil. The dollar was now a fiat currency, but its dominance was more entrenched than ever. This gave the United States what has been called an exorbitant privilege. America could print money to pay its debts, while other countries had to earn their dollars through exports. It was the ultimate financial advantage. So, how does this dominance translate into a weapon? This is where it gets really interesting. The key is that most international dollar transactions, no matter where they happen in the world, must pass through the U.S. financial system. Think of it like a global switchboard. If a bank in Germany wants to send dollars to a company in Japan, that transaction is typically cleared through a bank in New York. This gives the U.S. Treasury Department unprecedented visibility and control over global finance. And this control is the foundation of modern financial sanctions. When the United States wants to punish a country, a company, or even an individual, it doesn't need to send in the troops. It can simply cut them off from the dollar system. Imagine your bank account is suddenly frozen. You can't pay your bills. You can't buy groceries. You can't do business. Now, imagine that happening to an entire country. That's what U.S. sanctions can do. By designating a country as a primary money laundering concern, or adding its banks to a blacklist, the U.S. can effectively excommunicate it from the global economy. No international bank will risk doing business with the sanctioned entity, because if they do, they risk losing their own access to the dollar system. And for a global bank, that's a death sentence. Let's look at some real-world examples. Take Iran. For years, the U.S. has used sanctions to pressure Tehran over its nuclear program. By cutting off Iran's access to the dollar, the U.S. crippled its ability to sell oil, its main source of revenue, and participate in international trade. The Iranian economy was devastated, leading to hyperinflation and widespread hardship. Or consider Russia after its annexation of Crimea in 2014. The U.S. and its allies imposed sanctions targeting key sectors of the Russian economy, its major banks, and powerful individuals close to the Kremlin. These measures made it incredibly difficult for Russian companies to raise capital internationally and blocked access to critical technology. It wasn't a military blockade. It was a financial one. Even European allies are not immune. After the U.S. pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, it imposed secondary sanctions. This meant that any European company doing business with Iran could face massive fines and be cut off from the U.S. market. A French bank, BNP Paribas, was fined nearly $9 billion for violating U.S. sanctions against Iran, Sudan, and Cuba, even though the transactions were legal under French and EU law. The message was clear: if you want to use our currency, you have to play by our rules, no matter where you are in the world. This is the dollar weapon in action, a tool of foreign policy so powerful it can bend other sovereign nations to America's will. This system creates a deep dependency. Nations around the world, including economic rivals like China, have no choice but to participate. China is the world's second largest economy and a manufacturing powerhouse. It sells trillions of dollars worth of goods to the world, and in return, it accumulates a massive stockpile of U.S. dollars. As of today, China holds over $3 trillion in foreign exchange reserves, a huge portion of which is in U.S. Treasury bonds. This creates a strange, codependent relationship. China is effectively lending massive amounts of money to the United States, helping to fund the U.S. government's deficit. Why would they do this? Because there are few other places safe or large enough to park that much money. If China were to suddenly sell off its U.S. debt, it would cause the value of the dollar to plummet. But in doing so, it would also devalue its own massive reserves. It would be like burning down your own house to spite your neighbor. They are trapped in the dollar system, a system that they simultaneously resent and depend on for their own economic stability. This is the true genius, or perhaps the true danger, of the dollar's dominance. It forces even your biggest competitors to fund your power. It's a silent empire built not on territory, but on trust and the absence of a viable alternative. But the world is starting to get restless. Countries like Russia and China are actively trying to de-dollarize. They are conducting more trade in their own currencies, building alternative payment systems to SWIFT, the main global messaging network for financial transactions, and stocking up on gold. The rise of digital currencies also presents a potential challenge. Could a digital yuan, or even a decentralized currency like Bitcoin, one day break the dollar's monopoly? It's possible, but the obstacles are immense. The dollar's dominance is not just about policy. It's about infrastructure, trust, and habit. The world's financial plumbing is built with dollar-denominated pipes. Replacing that would be a monumental undertaking. Furthermore, for any currency to challenge the dollar, it needs to offer the same things: stability, liquidity, meaning it can be easily bought and sold, and the backing of a large, transparent, and predictable legal and economic system. Right now, no other country or currency can fully match what the United States and the dollar provide. The euro has its own internal political challenges, and the Chinese yuan is not yet fully convertible and is controlled by an opaque political system. So, while the cracks in the dollar empire may be showing, the foundations remain incredibly strong. So what does this all mean for the future? The story of the dollar is a profound lesson in power. It shows that in the 21st century, the most effective form of control isn't always military. It's economic. The dollar weapon has allowed the United States to shape global events, enforce its foreign policy, and maintain its position as the world's leading superpower, all while the world itself pays for the privilege. But this power comes with great responsibility and growing risks. Overusing sanctions could accelerate the search for alternatives and eventually undermine the very system that grants the U.S. this power. The world is at a crossroads. We are entering a multipolar era where economic power is more diffuse. The silent war over the future of money is heating up. Whether the dollar will maintain its throne or be forced to share it, one thing is certain: the way money and power are intertwined will define the conflicts and alliances of the decades to come. This isn't just a story about currency. It's a story about the invisible architecture of our modern world, a silent empire of control that affects every single one of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the power of the dollar. What do you think the future of money looks like? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explain how the world really works. See you next time.